us, we have our keynote speaker all the way from Denmark. So she's a managing partner at Nordic Makers. So please give a big round of applause for Nima Sophia Tisdall.
Hi everyone, nice to see you. Hi everyone, my name is Nima. I feel slightly as an imposter today because I'm not from Finland, but I'm from another Nordic country. I'm usually based in Copenhagen in Denmark, but I represent Nordic Makers, which is an investment group that invests across the Nordics, and we're really trying to bring together all of the Nordic countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, in an even tighter knit startup community. I'm also half Nepalese. I've lived there for just over half my childhood. Lived in Pokhara first for my first 5 years, and then in Kathmandu later on. And then my father has actually moved back again and is working on his entrepreneurial journey in Nepal. But today I'm here to talk to you about my entrepreneurial journey that happened over in Denmark, but hopefully there's some kind of resonance with what's happening in Finland too. It started back in 2019. This is my co-founder, Christine. The two of us started a company called Blue Lobster, and it was a digital marketplace for sustainable seafood. Basically, we have lots of fishermen in Denmark. We have lots of small coastal lines, similar to Finland, I think, but it has been a much bigger industry in Denmark. But the problem was that all these very small fishermen, they were getting so little money for their catch. The money was really going to these big industrial vessels, and we wanted to create something that allowed the small fishermen to get a better price for their catch. So this is kind of business as usual. This is a map of Denmark, in case you're not acquainted. It is a much smaller country than Finland rather. But even so, it had an incredibly inefficient supply chain. We over here, this is where Copenhagen is, over on this side. We were talking to fishermen who were near Copenhagen, catching lots of fish, catching flatfish and cod and this kind of things. And then they were selling it to an auction on the way other side of Denmark. Like you literally couldn't have gone further away. And this was because of the historic way that the supply chains were set up. It was also because the industry was shrinking, so everything was being consolidated in one end of the country. In return, it would be sold at that auction all the way over here at maybe 5 hours driving away, sold at an auction the next day, and then transported right back to Copenhagen, because Copenhagen was still the biggest market for this seafood. And we started walking around to the restaurants. Actually, first we went to the fishermen, knocked on their boats, and we said, "Where are you selling your fish?" And they were like, "Oh, we're selling it to a buyer who sells it to the auction, who then sells it to a purchaser, who then sells it to a wholesaler, who then sells it to the restaurants in Copenhagen." And we turned around and looked at a restaurant that was literally right on the same dock as the fishermen. And we would go and knock on their door and we would say, "Excuse me, chefs, where are you buying your fish?" And they would say, "Oh, we get it from a wholesaler who gets it straight from a buyer, who gets it straight from the auction." And we're like, "Oh, this is insane." Usually it would take 4 to 16 days for the fish from when it was caught to it was in the hands of the chef. And I don't know about you, but 16 days for me for fish, it's a long time. It managed to get quite old. But it's also very expensive because all of these middlemen need to be paid. So what we did was we basically just created a direct connection between the two, and then we could shrink the delivery time to 2 to 48 hours. It was very simple. I say it's very simple. It was actually really fucking complicated. It was as simple in mind. We had fishermen on one side. They would upload their fish when they were on their boats on the way into the harbor. And they would say, "I got 200 kilos of cod. They're this size. 500 kilos of plaice. They're this size." And then all the restaurants on the other side, they could see what was coming in. And then we had the time from when the fish was caught, going down through the water towards the coastline, and then until then the chefs could buy. And they would just be like a live little auction in the thing. And then the fisherman would get off his boat and he would pack to order. So he would say, "Oh, okay, the cash for his restaurant needs this much, 20 kilos of this, label the boxes, and we would just send a transporter out, pick it up, bring it to the restaurant. And this meant that not because we were cheaper or more expensive, we could pay, the restaurants had to pay the same price, but they were getting a better product. One, it was much fresher, much fresher. And two, we only worked with sustainable fishermen. So they also had this nice story of, we're not ruining the ocean floor, we're not having this like very much bycatch that ruins our marine ecosystems. So we were giving them a value add for the same price. On the fishermen, on the other hand, we could pay 2 to 4 times the normal price, simply because we were doing supply chain efficiencies, not because of anything else smart. It was really, so people back then really thought of us as a tech platform, but I would always say we were supply chain logistics innovation. That's really where the cost savings were. And then we got a transaction fee on this thing. As I said, these were kind of the fishermen that we were working with. We had one young guy, that's Morten in the middle. We used him in all our posters because he was also our best looking fisherman. No offense to the others, but he worked best for marketing. But we really got a connection with some really, really fantastic men. And they were all men. But these are the guys who were going out every single day and they were really using their bodies to fish in a sustainable method. And this is definitely a dying industry in Denmark and many other places. But being able to pay them a better price meant that they could actually continue their profession. Because for many years, in the years leading up to that we started, 42% of this type of fishermen stopped fishing because they weren't getting enough money per catch. So what do? You go into these bigger vessels, they sell their quotas to bigger vessels who have bigger machineries, and at the end of the day, it's worse for our environment. And it really took off. A lot of these articles are in Danish, but I promise it says at least 70 nice things about us. It really took off. It really got momentum. We also got a lot of backlash, and that's why you maybe can't read from the Danish titles. The industry got so mad at us. We were, young girls. We were 25 years old. We were like, who's not going to love this? It's sustainable. We got some nice fishermen. The restaurant's going to be happy. But it turns out all the middlemen that we were cutting out were not too happy, actually. So we were getting threats. Our box were getting smashed. Our fish was getting stolen. Our drivers were getting threatened. Our fishermen were getting coerced into going back to the auction. But what really happened was that we started creating a movement within the fishing industry of these actors that were using sustainable practices moving together, which was great. So between 2019 and 2022, we served over 200 restaurants, had them as customers. We also had canteens. This was by far our biggest customer segment. It was easier for us to deliver to B2B because we could get it in volume. We also had thousands of private customers, but this was really a side project during COVID because I don't know if you remember that, but during COVID, they kept on closing down all our restaurants. So we were a startup scaling. I went full-time January 2020. We closed our investment round February 2020, and then the entire restaurant industry closed in March. So it was an uphill battle, to say the least. But then we started selling to private customers. We tried that instead, and really the company survived on us being able to attract. I think on the first week that we launched our app towards B2C, we were able to attract almost 5,000 customers in the first 2 weeks. And they really kept us afloat through COVID. And that was my entrepreneurial story. And it ends in 2022 because that's when I actually stepped out of the company. And I joined Nordic Makers, which is an investment group, which, as I said in the beginning, is what I do today. So we are not venture capitalists, as we like to say. This is, I don't know if you can tell by the beautiful little dolls we got made. Someone actually handmade all these dolls. But this is myself and the partner group. This is Moafik over in the background. He is our Finnish partner. Maybe some of you know him. But we are all a group of previous entrepreneurs. And what we wanted to bring to the venture capital space, I say venture capital space because that's usually who we compete with, is some people who've been there before. So it's like the classical operators, gone investors story. But the guys that we have in our partner group are mostly ex-unicorn founders. And now most of them are Danish. And as I said, Moafik is our wonderful Finnish anchor. But the rest of the group have created Just Eat, which I guess many guys know. You guys have a competitor over here who's also a unicorn. And then we have Sitecore, which Lars and Michael, two of our partners, basically bootstrapped all the way to unicorn status. They sold to a private equity fund in San Francisco back in 2016. And Alexander, who co-founded Zendesk and was the head of product there. And they just they did an IPO route instead of a private equity sellout. And they just hit decacorn status. So, I mean, that's a great success story too. And what we try to do is kind of get hands-on with our investments. In total, we've invested 30 million euros in 59 different companies. We invest software, B2B, and then we do bold global products with ambitious teams. And I think this is an important aspect as well. We're really looking for people who want to be category winners, who dare think really, really big. And I'm specifically excited to be here today because I think we're standing with a community who has decided in a large sense to move from one country to another. And I think that all studies show that immigrants often make the best entrepreneurs. Because the idea of uprooting your entire life and moving to a new country, surely that's the biggest risk you could ever take in your life. So the idea of being so ambitious that you're going to try to make a category-winning company, I mean, almost sounds like a small feat comparing changing your entire life and moving across the world to a very, very cold place with a very, very weird language. Sorry to yes. And I just wanted to say, I always try to run through these things in case, I don't know how familiar everyone is with venture capital, but I always, as a founder myself, when I was fundraising, I found it a little like a black box. Like, what does this actually mean? What do investors actually look for? So I always try to say 2 words to demystify it, to give people a better shot of getting through, or at least a better understanding of what's happening behind the scenes. So this is our decision-making process. Not all venture capitalists look the same. And in fact, we're not a fund. We invest our own money only. So we don't have investors in the back. If you get money from Nordic makers, you're looking in the eyes of everyone who's giving you money. But I think most investors take somewhat of this kind of a vibe. We receive a pitch deck, then we have some follow-on questions. We have a weekly Wednesday meeting internally. If there's interest, we assign a potential lead, someone who's going to be your partner at Nordic Makers, someone who's going to take a special interest. It's not going to be myself, because I deal with all the new deal flow, and then the rest of the partner group deals with our portfolio. If that goes well, we have some more meetings, and then we have 1 monthly meeting where you meet the entire partner group, and then we have like final questions, potential co-investors we bring along, and a decision. And what does this look like? If you're standing there and you're in the middle of a fundraise, what does it look like? Our monthly meeting, which I think can be compared to like a IC meeting in some cases, we invite all founders to join us. We want to meet every founder that we invest in, because at the end of the day, when you're so early stage, we typically invest €500,000. When you're as early stage as us, we invest in the potential in people, mostly. So there's a 5-minute presentation, 25-minute Q&A, and then we see 2 to 3 pitches a day. What does this mean? This means that, like of getting an investment, we have an annual target of investing in 6 companies. We see about 30 pitches, and that means you have a 20% success rate if you made it to this very last bit of the funnel. So it is competitive, and it is difficult. And I always like to say, if you're in the process of talking to VCs, take a moment to understand the hierarchy of who you're speaking to, what's the potential that they can actually make a decision. Because I know as a founder, sometimes you get very excited because you have a really good relationship or a really good connection or a lot of enthusiasm from someone who might not actually have the decision-making power at the end of the day. And that person is not probably stringing you along. They're probably very, very excited about it. But unless they have the voting power, then maybe that's a bit of a flag. So I always say, careful of time wasters. As entrepreneurs, your time is the most important thing that you have at all. So first of all, avoid putting all your eggs in one basket and spending too much time with just one investor because you've fallen in love with them. Something I often talk to founders about is don't get excited about inbound interest too much. Sometimes we can get in a hype moment, and then you get a lot of inbound. But there are many reasons. There's some VCs, the younger people in the VCs are literally just hitting their KPIs. So just be careful about this. And I only say this because as an entrepreneur, I've been there in the moments of like, where are we in this? So what do you do? My personal reflections after jumping into the dark side of the startup ecosystem is love the quick no. I, at this point, try to say no to people as quickly as possible. And as a founder, the first time someone said no to me immediately, I was like, oh man, this guy doesn't get it at all. I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks trying to prove him wrong. It was kind of an event like this. And I spoke to him in person, and he was like, this is not for me. And I was like, oh, he doesn't get it. I need to convince him that it is something for him. And I was wrong, and he was right. And I wasted 2 weeks chasing a man that did not want me for investment. But so appreciate that quick no, because investors usually know what their scope is. So appreciate when they say no quickly, and then move on because they know what they're looking for. Remember the sanity checks. If you've spoken to, let's say, you heard people saying, I've spoken to 100 investors and they all say no. If that really is what's happening, either you're not checking up on if the investors are a good fit properly first, or your story isn't right. So remember to pull back. Remember, just like if you're doing normal sales, check yourself. If you keep getting no's too many times, do a quick sanity check. What can you improve? Traction makes everything easier. If you're not having success with investments, go do the sales, because that's actually at the end of the day how you build your business anyway. And then consider your own aspirations. I personally think that we jump very quickly into the investment side of building startups, but really I think company building is a lot more than going out and pitching to investors. So I would say at the end of the day, it's my last point, always focus on the core. I think the number one thing you can do is look at when you need to build your product, remember your customers, understand their pains. In an age where building product is becoming easier and easier and easier because of vibe coding and all of these things, understanding your customers is still the most important thing you could possibly have. So a good connection with your customers is the number one important thing. The second is an extension of this, really. Secure your sales. If sales is like bloodline to your company, and the investment will come if the sales are there. And at the end of the day, take a moment and always step back and figure out, what kind of company do I want to build? Do I want to spend my time mostly raising funds or talking to customers or building stuff? Do I want to be running 130 kilometers an hour or 90? Take those check-ins with yourself, because at the end of the day, an entrepreneurial journey is a great opportunity to build a life that you actually want. So make sure that you stay in charge. Thank you so much for listening.